All right, next we have Andy Fedewa, City Planner from the City of Lansing. Welcome, Andy.
So, can I ask real quick, how many in the audience today are Lansing residents? Great, awesome. More than I expected. There's been so many great presenters that have already covered a lot of the things that we're going to say. So it's great to have that kind of background. So I won't get into the housing life cycle that Joan just so greatly got into, but just real quickly, there are kind of five main stages. And earlier they spoke on the change in distribution of households. Um, and seniors, those age 64 and older, are those that are downsizing or finding their house for retirement, will make up 80% of the total increase in households from 2018 to 2038. Those 35 to 64 who are at the peak demand for their housing space will make up 20% of that total increase, compared to 75% from 1980 to 2020. So they kind of inversed each other. And most senior options, and especially in Lansing, but also across the country, you kind of have four main ones: age in place by choice. You're really connected to your neighborhood and you have the resources to stay, or you don't have the resources to find different accommodations and your house might not fit you anymore, so you're stuck. But live with family members or go to a senior community. That's very restrictive. There's not very many options, and everyone has a different situation, different circumstances. So how can we kind of expand those choices? In Lansing, aging in place kind of looks like this house on the left. You'll see that they added an accessibility ramp, but there's no room to really get into that accessibility ramp to get into your house. And so this might be a senior who's stuck aging in place. Or there's a senior community. This is on the south side. I think we have three or four that are actually inside the city limits of Lansing. But those costs associated with staying in that kind of unit is so expensive, and it just rises year after year. And so okay, planning nerd. I'm going to get a little bit into why this kind of situation happens. This is a example of transit planning, where you have your rural area, your kind of suburban, exurban area getting into the more urban, and then your city center. And what that style perpetuates is segregation of housing style and land uses, where all your choices are to get around by car in the suburban areas, your large lot houses, your 4-bedroom houses. That's all you can do, or you can drive to. This is a lovely room. This is a lovely space, but where's the neighborhood? We're in the middle of farm MSU. And or if you get into the more dense urban areas, and that's where your resources are, but different circumstances that you might not have your amenities and your services that you are looking for. Joan touched on this a little bit of just how pervasive single family housing is. This beige color is single family only in Lansing. It's 83% of our residential districts. On the so back up real quick. We have a new zoning code in 2021 that went away from that transit planning, that segregation planning, into a more form-based code that's more about. We don't care about really what you do inside that building, but we're more concerned about how that building fits in with the built environment, being connected, walkable, close to transportation. But we still have that legacy of that single family. On the right-hand side, I will point out our red, which is our mixed-use commercial that will allow, rather than just a single use, like just a bank or just a corner store. Now you can have a corner store and housing on top of that. So it's more flexible, has more density. You're closer to those transportation lines, your buses, and you're closer to the daily services and amenities that you need. I guess I just said that we're kind of in the middle of farm MSU, but we created neighborhood mixed use zones that are at these really important intersections throughout the city. And this kind of came about speaking to Allen Neighborhood Center. If you've been down on the east side to El Neighborhood Center, it kind of transformed to somewhat vacant space with a barber shop and some other tenants over the years to a very vibrant mixed use community that now has housing when it didn't for since Joan started until she left. So it just speaks to how amazing her group transformed that space. And that's what we're really striving for with these neighborhood mixed use zones that are strategically placed throughout the city. So I mentioned that transit planning that I want to throw in the dumpster, get rid of, and go to what we call complete neighborhoods or a 15-minute city where your house or where you live is maybe not in the middle, but at least in close proximity to all the resources and service amenities that you need. You have that social space that you can be engaged with your community. You have that park space that's only 10 minutes away. Your pharmacy, your credit union is close by. We recognize that not every neighborhood will be able to sustain all these services and amenities. So it's also about creating a web between these neighborhoods that make them accessible. So what your community doesn't have, you can easily get to the next neighborhood that does have that. And this is just a great visualization of what that 15-minute city or that mile complete neighborhood looks like. You can get to a lot more spaces with a connected street grid that's on bus lines that has that mixed use zoning allowable uses rather than that cul-de-sac suburb that all you have is dead ends and single family housing. So challenges in our existing housing stock, 90% of Lansing was the housing stock was built before 2000. And so that's really challenging as you age. We saw that picture where the accessibility ramp was not an ideal location, but that also is an elevated foundation that requires that ramp. So how can we maybe change our zoning code to allow slab on grade where there's no increase between grade and your house floor? So you don't have to have that accessibility ramp to even worry about it. Largely our housing stock has upper story bedrooms, which are very difficult as you age sometimes maybe. Getting into that in-house mobility when your bathroom or your shower is upstairs as well. Sometimes that's not feasible for some of our population. And speaking into neighborhood isolation, going back real quick to that kind of cul-de-sac image, if you live in the center of that and your next neighbor might be 100 feet over, through the years, you might not know them anymore as people move in and out. My neighbor is a 73-year-old woman, and I will not let her shovel her sidewalk and driveway since I moved in 5 years ago. So, but she's only 10 feet away from me. Right. You know, there's that availability to meet your neighbors. I'm across the street as I live on the east side, right by the Sparrow Hospital. So that's another amenity that I'm close to, even though I'm not a senior. But I'm next to a triplex. I'm next to 3 duplexes. There's a 14-unit apartment building that Mr. Muley used to own back in the day. So there's all these housing options because I'm in a complete neighborhood. So that's what my driving force to replicate in Lansing. Joan spoke a little bit on how adaptive reuse and conversions are mostly illegal in Lansing. You can't create a kind of addition or a carved out unit for a duplex. We get questions all the time. My mom is aging. We want to bring her closer to home. Can we put in an in-suite in our house? You would say no. Why? I have the space. That's the rule. Sorry. And that kind of rigidity is going to drive people away. Lansing is stagnant. We haven't had a population increase in 2 generations. And if we want to be flexible and we want people to age in place safely, if we want to attract families, we have to have that flexibility. We have to have these different amenities that make us competitive to our urban regions that are growing. And Dave can speak on this a little bit more. New infill with that single family only zoning, all you're going to get is single family housing. In a market like Lansing, those numbers just don't add up. And praise Dave for investing in Lansing and building new housing because he's very modest, but he's one of the people who actually have like a very love for Lansing and historic preservation. But he's not the kind of person who is only focused on $400,000 houses that are, still building in Meridian Township or Bath, or I'm not knocking anyone, but Lansing has different circumstances. So we need to be more flexible to allow what our economics allow or make sense. So we kind of spoke onto that challenge of housing, challenge in our neighborhoods. We have damaged sidewalk network. Fix the damn roads is a great refrain. I don't give a crap about streets, to be honest. I care about sidewalks. Our budget only allows for $500,000 for sidewalk repair every year. That's going to get you a few miles.
Yeah.
Every neighborhood has sidewalks upended by tree roots, just age. The oldest sidewalk I've seen in my neighborhood was built in poured in 1924. That one's actually going strong. It's kind of the exception rather than the rule. Our neighborhood commercial zones, those red corridors, are dominated by convenience stores or vehicle businesses. And we only have 4 community centers that offer services, not just for recreation, but also senior focused programs as well. So just for housing, and there's a myriad of other things that come into play with economics, but I'm just going to talk on housing real quick. And excuse me, Joan introduced these pretty well. Through this process of over a year and a half now, and that's not my fault, that's City Council's fault. We've been ready for a while. But through this process, we've actually found 8 existing ADUs. Doesn't sound like a lot, but they already exist. So why are they illegal now? How can we re-legalize them and kind of get that critical mass back up? And I thought we were going to be the first major city in the area to have them. I was surprised to hear that Meridian Township has them. That's awesome. I would like to speak more on that. I looked up real quick. Is that citywide?
It's township-wide.
Township-wide.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So a lot of people, when they do that, they only focus, or a lot of municipalities only focus on the dense urban core. Our ADUs would be allowed citywide. Cottage courts with 3 to 6 units would be in multifamily in downtown. So again, there's an opportunity to expand once they maybe get more prevalent, to expand into single family as well. Housing cooperatives that are allowed in multifamily, commercial, and downtown districts. They can be more dense, so that's why we're kind of focusing on the downtown core right now. The Spartan Housing Cooperative has 2 houses downtown right now, so how can we maybe kind of expand that? And then a rooming house would be a homeowner occupant to rent to 3 lodgers. Jonah's doing that right now, but she's restricted to 2 unrelated adults because we have what's called a functional family. And we could get into the discriminatory and racial history of that. And I know East Lansing has fought the definition of family, and that's awesome. But Lansing, we're kind of stuck with it right now. And then allowing for single room occupancy rentals are like the YMCA, the boarding house of old, allowing those in commercial and downtown areas where that density kind of makes more sense. And I know I'm short on time, so I'm going to try to wrap up real quick. Just to kind of get into the insanity of zoning rules sometimes, this is an infill opportunity, and this is one of the changes that we're putting forward right now, where we say we allow for middle housing, so that's 2 to 6 units in certain districts. But to actually build that, you have to have so many, X amount of lot size. So this is a 6 unit by Sparrow Hospital. It fits in the neighborhood. I think it looks nice. It's a very cool building. But if you wanted to build another one in that exact same spot, you would have to take down those 3 houses to have the minimum lot size. Nothing would be there. It'd be green space, but you would lose that housing stock to replicate the same massing. Why? And I won't get into this because I'm really short on time, but so these are kind of our beginning steps, and it's a little bit conservative because our city council is conservative, and they're worried that, all hell is going to break loose by letting new residents live in Lansing, but we got to start somewhere. And we have to be more flexible, and not just for seniors. What's good for seniors is good for the entire community.
Yes.
We have to have space for everyone. Everyone's life situation is different. Their circumstances are different. And we don't all stay in a certain age. We don't stay in certain circumstances. So how can we be flexible? How can we keep those options open? How can we connect people to their small town businesses, their services and amenities, and the things that they need on a daily basis? That's my focus, and that's why I'm pushing these changes as much as I can. And even though it's going to slowly, we have a city council public hearing scheduled for April 21st. So if you're a Lansing resident, and even if you're not, I definitely recommend that you write city council and let them know that you support these changes. And knock on wood, our earliest passage date would be May 5th when we would legally allow them. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it.